you, Nandita. That was a lovely introduction. Yeah. And thank you to Rotary Mid Chennai Mid City for, opening this such a fantastic opportunity for me. I think this is the first time I'm actually interacting with Rotarians. So, yeah, it's really an honor. Okay, now I'm just going to, throw light on what I have been through all the last, I mean, 3 decades and more. I run, so I'm a co-founder and director of Socio, an organization that works extensively in the social, emotional, mental, cognitive development space with both children and adults. And now, why we started this is primarily because of the inequalities, stereotypes, and biases that we experience, feel, and many a times imbibe and embrace too unknowingly. So, sadly, we also realize that the three institutions that we earlier worked with, and also the three Indian curriculum, ICSE, CBSE, and state syllabi, didn't have a network or didn't have a platform where they spoke about social, emotional, mental well-being of children. So that pushed us into doing a lot of research on the subject, where we formed a prime group and a research group which extensively worked in the research field for, I would say, more than a year before we put our modules and our workshops together. That's how Socio began in 2010. So we've been working closely in this field for over a decade now. But before that, I began my entrepreneurial journey in 2004, immediately after I moved out of journalism. So I was a primetime anchor and a newsreader with Asianet, after which I moved to Bangalore with an English channel. Worked there for some time, and it was during my journalism years that I kind of extensively traveled to the interiors of, I would say, primarily South India. And that's when I realized that a lot of people like me, so I come from a very remote village, the remotest village you can think of, from Kerala, in the central part of Kerala, in Palakkad. So I realized that there are a lot of people like me coming from interior pockets who do not have the necessary skill set and exposure to kind of compete shoulder to shoulder with peers coming from B towns and maybe cosmopolitan cities. So then I kind of quit journalism in 2004, and I got more than brickbats for it, for having left journalism at my prime career. And then I started my first firm called Race, which was more corporate training, language skills, articulation skills, and skill set enhancement. So we worked in Pan India with offices in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Bombay, Delhi, and Trivandrum. In 2004, there wasn't much importance given to soft skills or social skills, or there weren't many institutions in Bangalore that catered to the fine tuning of your finer skill sets, because of which Race had, I would say, a wonderful takeoff with many offices across India. And I think life has its own way of putting you down, or maybe giving a knock on your head when you feel that you've achieved something in life and you're flying far. In Immediately after that, in 2006, 2 years into my entrepreneurial journey, is when I had a brain hemorrhage, a cortical vein thrombotic attack, and then I was bedridden like a vegetable for some time, which actually paralyzed my personal and professional life. And Raise was was a proprietary concern, and because of which I didn't have a second line of defense. So the company suffered immensely during my leave, or my off from, I mean, when I took off from my professional life. And when I got back, it had affected both my cognitive development and my memory too. So it took me a while to come back to life with my memory intact, and I had to kind of struggle to even recall names of my friends, my school friends, my colleagues. So then you know how it is when it is a proprietary concern, and then you don't have a second line of defense, that the company was going through a natural death. So then I thought, why not me utilize that particular time to enhance my education. I went to IIM to do my entrepreneurial management program. And it was also that time when my son was with my mom, because I was doing a residential program there. And when I was actually going through my program and deciding to present my paper on relaunching Race with more skill sets or more modules, is when one day when I called home, my son was crying inconsolably. And when I asked him what happened, he said, Amma, I tripped and fell. And one person who was sitting there very, very casually asked me, why am I crying like a girl? 5-year-old boy took a heavy toll on his mental health. He kept asking me or rather questioning me as to why boys are not allowed to cry or why girls are called crybabies. Now, subtle remarks or silly remarks that we brush aside or not given enough emphasis to or significance to in life, that made me think aloud. The same weekend when I went home, he kept asking me, why are you not giving me an answer? Because I guess I have lived a very liberal life. I mean, my parents brought me up without religion or caste attached to my name. Neither any religious or political ideologies forced upon me. So my son also grew up in the same environment. And hence it was very difficult for him to kind of attach himself to gender equation or an unconscious bias that he was thrown into. So then I quickly did a research on how many times we actually go through such gender reminders in life. Right from our childhood, every now and then, in small reminders, we are reminded of our gender or sex. And then this has a very lasting impression, or I would say, many a times a scar in the psyche of both children and adults, which might ruin your mental emotional balance at a later stage. We might not know it in the initial stages, but it can take a huge toll on you. And that's when I actually decided to give my business plan a twist, and then gave a presentation at IIM in terms of launching a company which would talk about social, emotional, mental health with children and starting at a very young age, which actually won the second prize at IIM, which gave me the booster or the confidence that okay, this would click in the market. And that's how 2010 we launched Socio. Now with Socio, when I mean last 10 years we've been traveling with Socio, I would want each of you who are attending this program to ask yourselves how many times actually you talk in terms of gender defined characters and gender defined language at home with yourself, with your spouses and partners, or with your children. There are a plenty. If you actually look at it, yeah, there are subtle reminders everywhere. So now we start our programs as early as sixth grade or fifth grade when a child goes through a transformative age, and when a child can pick up and understand what gender means and how we should treat genders and what are the unconscious biases that one is thrown to, even at home. Now what has happened is during the pandemic, now until pandemic, a lot of the schools did not let us run the programs because then it means that you need to shake your foundation and then start at the beginning. So we were struggling to kind of though we were seen, heard, and accepted at many quarters, we were not widely accepted, I would say, to be very honest, because it meant that every school had to relook into their ideologies and their practices. But this pandemic actually threw open the flip side of not having mental emotional support during your growing up years. So we've been like bombarded with calls and counseling requests for children going through difficulties and uncertainties that this pandemic has brought in. So what has happened is, so now when you look at it, if we have had a proper emotional mental support where we talk of adaptability in children at the right age, we wouldn't have suffered right now in this gravity. So now the kind of programs that we can run has also limitations because we're a small group. But then I mean to just give you examples of the kind of stories that we've been listening to. Uh, it's very surprising that most of the stories that come from couples and from families are all from economically, I would say, well-off families. And why, if you ask yourself, spouses are, I think spouses have gotten the most time to spend with each other during the pandemic. And that's also the time they realize that uh, the first years of being together or living together, first few years have been wonderful. But then when you actually start living together in the same space day in and day out without a break or without going out or without meeting another person is when you realize that there are gender defined roles in every household. And especially with women who are working, and especially with women who are financially independent, this has been an eye opener. And this has transpired into bigger fights, into what WHO has already warned us as a shadow pandemic, that can be domestic abuse or domestic violence or domestic incompatibility. So we've been like handling a lot of these issues over the last 6 months, right from, I mean, 2 years of age to 70 years of age. So yesterday I was handling a call which was initiated by a grandmother from Delhi. And then in the same house, you have grandparents living, you have the second generation parents living, and the youngsters living. And if you actually look at the generation gap, it's so huge and wide. You really can't enforce whatever you've seen or you've experienced over the years, neither with your children nor with your grandchildren. So the grandmother called and said that the 12-year-old girl in the house has become completely shut and to herself and does not come out of the room, and he or she doesn't even acknowledge people in the household. And how, I mean, and she said, this is not the way I would want a child growing up in my household. So I've been literally trying to dash open the road, enter the door and enter her room, and then try and initiate a conversation. So I listened to her completely, and then I said, I mean, how many of you would agree to such a stance? I mean, we all might feel the urge to kind of make them come out of the room and then talk and be with us. But then we also need to understand that children also need their spaces. And 10 to, I would say, 15 or 16 years of age is when they need their space the most, when they want others to treat them as another individual and not as an extension of the father or the mother. And especially when you have grandparents, they would want their systems and practices and rituals to be forced on the grandchild. So it was a huge conflict inside the house. And the son later called me and said, I am torn between my parents and my children, so I really do not know what to do. So we've been like receiving so many such calls over the pandemic, and I feel a lot of this could have been handled if we had the right practices in place during growing up years, making them adaptable. There was another mother who called. It was a silly thing which actually prompted a lot of dialogues in Kerala. So the mother said, my son is in the seventh but does not know to fold clothes. And she understood it only during the pandemic. And I'm sure that he's well versed in engineering lessons or in physics or chemistry. So how are we bringing up children? Where are the life skills getting lost in your fast paced life or in your rat race? So we as a company have been giving a lot of emphasis to life skills. When I say life skills, it starts as right from making your own tea to preparing yourself to face bigger challenges. Now, we all know that 2018 floods is when Kerala government realized the need to have swimming lessons as part of your academic curriculum. So these are things that need to be taught now and do not come as part of your growing up curriculum. So which is why Socio does so many programs which we kind of have either forgotten or do not give enough emphasis while a child is growing up in our households. And what we realized is teachers are overburdened with their lessons and the time to kind of complete their syllabus, which is why maybe we are not very welcome in schools. But then if these are given through parenting lessons or through parents and through teacher training programs, then it reaches wider audience and it reaches more people. And which is why we are now tied up with teacher training programs across states and across CBSE platforms, where we run these programs for teachers, and in turn from teachers it goes to the children. And also public parenting programs where we talk about finer aspects of living. It's not just parenting, it's also where you create a conducive and a very healthy environment in your household for a child to grow up to become an adult and not an extension of you. So which is something that I've been, emphasizing, that a child is not an extension of the mother or the father. He or she is another individual, and they have their own interests, passions, their own dreams, and let's support that. So this is what Socio is all about. My personal journey has been quite a struggle the last many years after my brain hemorrhage. I came back to life, and then, I mean, I was talking to Nandita on her Rendezvous program, and then I was telling her what I've been through over the last several years. Lost my mom, lost my dad to cancer, and one after the other, and then my mother-in-law. My father-in-law was diagnosed of cancer. Luckily, they both survived and they're in good health. But then every year we've been fighting one or the other cancer in the family. And my dad and mom left very early, I mean, very young. So that actually took a great toll on my mental health. And I was then diagnosed of clinical depression. I'm just off medicines last 1 year. It's been a battle with depression along with all these work of socio. So that's been my journey, and professionally and personally. Right now we've opened a 24/7 number where people can reach out to us in terms of any need support. So we recently launched a campaign called Together We Can, where we release 3 films. Now, Together We Can is a completely different thinking, where people from any walk of life, I mean, now if people listening to this or in Rotary think that they can either financially or infrastructure wise or resources wise can tie up with another entrepreneur or another company and then provide necessary services to people who are affected by the pandemic or the floods. These are the 2 areas that we are focusing on. We are bringing them together. So Together We Can, right now we actually helped a lot of the weaver community who lost jobs during the pandemic and floods, and the tailor community, because the tailor community was completely hit by the pandemic. So that is how we began Together We Can during Onam, because we kind of rolled out our services for people in Kerala during Onam. And then we also identified economically backward children who do not have access to online education by providing TV sets and mobile sets. So these are not funded by Socio, but we kind of bring together people who have the necessary means to actually fund a program, and then we put the resources or the monetary side of it to the right channels, and we monitor it, and we give the I would say the behind the camera support for all the work that is carried out, because we have volunteers in all the 14 districts of Kerala, and in Chennai, in Bangalore, in Dehradun, and in Delhi. So through our volunteer network, we've formed on ground volunteer network. So through our volunteer network, we kind of roll out these services and help, which is also the reason why we have started this 24/7 support for any need. I mean, I can confidently say we have the support system to kind of get the dots connected. Yeah. So that's about my journey, and that's about the work that I carry out. Yeah, Nandita?
I think Nandita is dropped off because she says she has got another client meeting which she has
Oh,
got.
okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So do we take questions? Do we have...
Yes.
Yes, please. I would be more than happy to do that, because this monologue is not something that I'm so used to.
Yeah, I think we can have another 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yeah.
Lovely session, Pranav. I just got one question. Do you use any standard tools for diagnosing this emotional health when you get into with anybody?
Not really. There is no scientific or if you say a gadget driven tool, no. But then we have our own patterns. We have psychiatrists and psychologists on board, and when we run programs in schools, these are workshop driven programs. So through an activity, we can actually gauge it. So these activities are actually formed or derived or created using tools of psychology that support emotional, mental, physical growth, cognitive development of a child.
Okay, thanks.
And if you do detect something, you tackle it one to one, or is it overall?
Absolutely no, one to one.
And on an average in Chennai, how many calls come through?
From Chennai?
Yeah.
We started this, I think it's been 40 days. So most of the calls have been from Bombay, I mean Maharashtra, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, not from Chennai, but interiors, very close to Pondicherry. Couple of, yeah, I don't remember the name of there's something that starts with M.
Matrantakam.
Namakkal.
Madurantakam.
Namakkal.
Namakkal. Namakkal is near Salem. Namakkal is near Salem, Erode.
So Namakkal, Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, we're receiving enough and more calls, but not from Chennai specifically. Namakkal, Coimbatore, Salem, all interior pockets.
And the diagnostic issues are very varied, or is it?
Very varied. Yeah, from substance abuse to alcoholism to I mean whatever you call as extramarital affairs to not having
Most
enough.
commonly in which age group?
30 to 45.
30 to 45.
Yeah, most of the calls are coming from
I would have
the
thought it was
so-called middle-aged. Yeah.
What about kids? I mean, do they call in?
No. Kids,
No.
very few, because one is, I don't think the kind of publicity and marketing that we do actually reaches the kids. Yeah.
Okay.
And because of which most of the calls that come to us are through parents.
Okay.
Which is why we have a support system. We've started something called Hug a Buddy, Be a Buddy and Hug a Buddy. So the local on-ground support system that we have, the volunteers, they actually go to the schools and then ask them to circulate the numbers within the children. So if I have a problem and if I'm living, let's say in Palakkad district, then Palakkad district would have 1 or 2 on-ground support staff. So the children there can reach out to that support staff. They don't call the 24/7 support.
So when you said the age group was 30 to 45, 30 to 45 is the age group of people calling in.
24/7 calling in, yes.
Yeah. And then narrating problems of the children of which age? That's what I meant actually.
Teenagers, parents of teenagers.
Mostly teenagers.
Yeah, I would say from 10th grade to, let's say, maximum, 10th grade to graduation years. Yeah. Maximum calls that we've received so far is from parents of 10th grade this year, who are passing out this year.
Okay. Ma'am, this trend of this huge number of rapes, I'm sorry, it's slightly different from this.
No, this is exactly what we handle rapes, we handle suicide tendencies, okay. Yeah.
No, particularly from UP, here, and then to the kind of the violence that those fellows, carry out, or things like that. How is it related to this, what you're talking about, to the upbringing or from the...
It is very related, sir. Now, my next column on this is October. October 13th is coming out on gender and sexuality and sex education in schools, which I write in Madhrubhumi. So, see, now biology lessons are not taught properly in schools.
Shall we?
Sorry?
No, I think, sorry, that was meant for somebody else. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and most of the teachers find it difficult to actually explain biology and what biologically a body goes through. Now, as parents, when a child is 10 or 11 years of age, you need to sit him or her down and explain things as it is, not through a made-up story or not through fairy tale stories. You need to. Now, I'll give you a small example. My son was going for outside a residential program for a week. And then I knew that they would be put up in hostels, and then he was in the 8th grade. And then there would be boys, girls. So he goes to an IGCSE led school, and then they have sex education mandatory in 7th and 8th grade. Even then, as a mother and as a person who deals extensively in sex education, I sat him down, I asked him, do you know the do's and don'ts? Do you know where you draw your boundary line? Do you know how you respect spaces, be it a girl, be it a boy? Because even boys need, and most of the abuse cases that come to us are done by the same sex boys or girls. So so he said, yes, Amma, these are taught in school. Even then I sat him down and I told him, there are certain things as a mother I need to tell you. How many parents are comfortable talking in this language is the first question. Now, the more we kind of hide things from them, which are related to their sex, which are related to their sexuality, the more they would be inquisitive about it, they would read about it, they would watch. I mean, everything is available online. Netflix and Amazon has thrown open everything to children. So if we do not guide them with the right information, with facts and data, they would experiment it the wrong way. So we are actually starting a movement which would force government to start sex education in schools, and to teach them how to respect bodies, be it a girl, be it a boy. Now rape cases, though it does not come out in the media, we listen to a lot of the rapes that happen to boys too. So, I mean, forgetting gender, it's become violence towards a body has become very rampant in India these days. And because of which we really want institutions and parents to actually step up and then talk about it, not in a hushed manner, but in a very transparent manner with children.
Yeah, but will it help? Because
Absolutely, it will definitely. We've never given it a try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like four or five boys drag that girl.
Exactly. See, so here, I mean, now you should also think about the strata that they are coming from. So do they even have an access to education is the first question there. Now, whatever I am talking is from the purview of a child going to a school and then getting educated. Now, these are things that are happening at a section where they do not even have access to education. So in such cases, yeah, only public awareness programs driven by the government can help. So it has to be a public-private participatory program, which is why we've been forcing governments to rethink and reform their policies and come out with things that where we openly discuss problems. It's not just about academics anymore. It has to be a well-rounded approach where a child is made aware and made conscious about what is happening around us.
Okay, but can the governments do something? I mean, would you have some concrete program?
I don't want to be politically aligned, but yeah, but there are a couple of governments in India who I know are taking immense steps and strategy-driven approaches to tackle these issues. But beyond that, we know where India stands now and how far we have not come or gone behind the ages now. So it's too early to actually comment on it. But then if we do not start now, this is going to be a raging issue every day. Now in 2000, I mean, when Nirbhaya happened, I am the POSH committee of many companies. So after the POSH committee was formed, initially during the first few months, I used to listen to at least 10 or 15 sexual harassment stories inside organizations, which came down to kind of nil in 2019. So which means that certain policies that the government put in place are yielding results.
No, Aparna, I think another point is we don't see counselors available in any of the government schools or even the private schools, right? Some private schools probably put it in their brochures that we have doctor on call or counselor on call. But frankly, I've not heard of any cases. I don't know whether any of our co-members would probably agree to it. We've not heard of a case where a student willingly is taken to a counselor, sit with a counselor, and then actually counseled on the do's and don'ts or whatever, right? We don't have that in our setup at all.
Absolutely. See, it is mandatory, but then the data also shows that a lot of the counselors have done more damage than good. Okay. Because now counselors who come to schools are counselors who are either freelancers or people who found a stopgap job to just keep to just get whatever pocket money they want. They are not practicing people who listen to a number of stories and experiences and problems. So which is why we do not encourage having a counselor on board. I mean, if it is a counselor, then it has to be somebody who is very well connected with the children. Now, a counselor sitting in the school, how many children would be actually willing to go to the counselor if you do not establish a comfort zone with the person there? I really don't think. I mean, children, yeah. So which is why we want the teachers to step up to that level and maybe become second parents, so that if a child has a problem, the teacher is also equipped enough to handle it. Teachers need to be friends now and not teachers anymore. Like, I mean, you don't have bad children, you only have bad teachers. So that if the child fails, it's I would completely say that it's in the hands of the teachers. How a child becomes what he or she is in the hands of the teachers and the parents completely, and the ecosystem he or she falls in, the immediate ecosystem, the neighborhood, and the social circle that you belong to. So I mean, I don't know who asked me the question.
No.
Sorry.
Anoop.
Anup, so this is why we run workshops, and then we also share a number and email IDs, and then we also have a person who visit them and build that rapport with children, so that we become very friendly. We don't even let them call us ma'am or sir, more like I mean, calling names, so that they connect with us better. So we have listened to enough and more stories from students. There was an incident in Coimbatore where a boy actually reached out to me at 11:30 in the night, and then I saw the message actually only at 4 o'clock, and then I immediately messaged him saying, whenever you see this message, please call me. So he called me at 6 o'clock, and then he said, ma'am, I was actually on the verge of taking my life. So, because we had done a program which talked very subtly about signs and symptoms of suicide tendencies, and he knew who he could connect with, and then he immediately messaged me. So I always tell my children, whoever sits in my program, I give my number. I said, whenever it be, please reach out to us. There are many instances like that where we could save children from taking their lives. And it's scary. It is scary beyond imagination.
Right. Thank you, Aparna. We can probably take one more question before we close.
Sure.
Anyone?
Yeah, I have an observation to make. I mean, not about Aparna's thing, role as the with what she's doing. Couple of days back, Ashok, myself, and Rakhi, another Anne from our club, three of us, we were in a government girls' school in Anna Nagar in Chennai, and we have spent about 2.5 crores creating a new building for them. It's a girls' school, very poorly funded. So we've turned around, or our effort is to turn around that community completely. So we were there. There was some renovation work that needs to be done. So we were sitting with the headmistress and another teacher. So the teacher, I think she was a language teacher, Ashok. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know that Ashok is there. So there was
She's English teacher. Yeah.
English teacher, right? So she made out a point that what you said. She said we are not just teachers. We understand their problems that they go through at home, and we are not here only to teach them. Right now, it's difficult because everything is online. I mean, they send out PDFs on WhatsApp, but their effort. So she claims that is we are doing much better work than what the private teachers are doing. Our job is, or we're trained to actually pick on kids who have problems or difficulties at home, whether it is physical abuse or mental abuse. They pick on that. So they also have a list of students who don't get food to eat. So now we, as a club, in fact, Rakhi has asked the teacher to send her the list, and she said we will reach out food to them. Just because they can't come to school, they don't have food at home, because food is provided in the school, right? So I think, so the effect, I mean, in effect, the point I'm saying, trying to arrive at is that the teachers need to be not just teachers of that one subject, but I think be a little more, as you said, friends or whatever it needs, it takes to bring these
Sure.
children up.
Yeah, exactly. So in India, excepting Kerala government schools and Delhi government schools, most of the government schools in India go through the same issue, whatever you mentioned right now. Children come to school only for the midday meals, and government schools are all dilapidated. Now, here in Bangalore, I volunteer with two schools, teaching them communication and language. I know the condition the schools are in, and the teachers also multiply as cook, as sweepers, as cleaning staff. The pressure on them is not any small. Now there's a small example that I need to share with you. Now for the Together We Can campaign, we had to identify, because in Kerala, even though the government is doing a lot of work to reach out to the poor and needy, there still are pockets where, I mean, especially the tribal belts, where they're completely cut off from reality or the outside world. So I spoke to a couple of teachers in a government school, and I said, I need details of children who are actually going through issues beyond our what we fathom. So the teacher said, let us visit their homes and then come back. And the teacher came back and started crying over the phone. So I asked what happened. So they said, the children that she visited, 5 of them, didn't have a roof above their heads. Now I'm talking about Kerala. I mean, supposedly a very advanced state and literate state, and the teacher felt so guilty, because teacher said, I did not know the kind of background they were coming from, and there are many days they would not do homework and come and sit in the class, and I've made them stand outside too. So the guilt that whatever she saw when she visited their homes, she couldn't take it. And then after 2 days she called me, she said, I need a counseling session. And so I sat her down, and then 1 week into this whole episode, she was diagnosed with depression because the guilt was so intense. She said, as a teacher, I have completely failed myself. So many a times children come to class not because they want to learn. It's because they are either provided food, or for some time during the class is on, they have a roof above them. So these are things that we go through, we experience, we listen to on an everyday parlance, I would say. Though Socio is as a company for profit organization, it's a social enterprise. So we identify gaps socially, and then try and intervene wherever possible. So this I mean, it's like a vicious circle. We really do not know where to start, or I mean where it ends. But then somewhere we need to start, and which is why we've begun our programs. But then I think the Rotary and all, you all are very strong and very, very powerful arm. So things like whatever we discussed are things that you can take to a larger platforms and to larger people, because as a company, Socio has its own limitations, the kind of people we can reach out to. But then which is when Nandita called me, I said Rotary would be a good forum for me to talk about my work and then take it to a larger audience. So wherever you find, if you find, I mean, Socio can intervene, or maybe have a dialogue, please put us in touch with them. We would be more than happy to kind of assist and support.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much.
Yeah, most welcome. Pleasure is mine too.
Yeah, over to you, Kurian.
No, so
No,
I'm doing the
you
vote of
can,
thanks.
yeah, Anup, please
Yeah.
do the vote of thanks, please.
First of all, I mean, I think Ashok put it in our chat, right? Wonderful insight. We never knew that. I mean, not never knew. We probably ignored uh, most of these problems. So you probably don't experience it, so we don't probably acknowledge it. So thanks a lot for sharing your journey. For a person who suffered from brain hemorrhage and vegetable, you talk quite a bit. No, thank you. I think
Yeah.
it is purely our honor. So we've always had speakers who come and share their experiences in terms of how they cycle from India to Hamburg, and
Yeah, I know that person. Yeah.
yeah. So we've never had a person who does something for the community, and then that person themselves go through a lot of difficulty and then come out of it, and now helping people. Thank you, Aparna, for the wonderful
Yeah, I
insight.
guess when you are lying on the hospital bed, watching only the fan rotate above you, then you kind of start reevaluating your life.
Yeah, inspiring words. Thank you. No, but no. Seriously, I think on a serious note, thank you for taking time and speaking with us. I assume you're speaking from Bangalore.
Yes.
The advantage of the only advantage of the pandemic is that now distance doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the only advantage we see is that we get to see people who probably can't make it to Chennai physically or whatever. And thank you all the members. Thank
Been
you
a
NK
pleasure,
for
complete pleasure. Yeah,
thank you
you can
NK
all
for
write to me whenever you need. I mean, aparna@socio.net or twc@socio.net. It's together we can at socio.net. If you Google us, you will get enough information about the kind of work we carry out and our new initiatives that are coming up too. And every fortnightly, Tuesdays, I write a column in Madhubhumi editorial page. I write in English, but then obviously they translate and put it up. But then the original piece in English goes online on Madhubhumi English. I also write another column in the Economic Daily, which is another publication online. So if you actually visit our website, you would get links to all these.
Okay. Now, thank you, NK, for sharing about the citation. Thank you all for joining. We also need to figure out who comes from a remotest part of Kerala, whether it is Rajiv from Palakkad district or Aparna from Palakkad district.
We are neighbors.
Where are you, Rajiv?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Palakkad.
Originally from Cherplaseri.
Originally from Cherplaseri, but everybody is settled in Palakkad town.
So I am from Cherplaseri.
Oh my God. Hey, so after everybody leaves, let's continue our chat. Don't log off.
Yeah, so I'm born and brought up there until my graduation, and then moved to Calicut, and then Pondicherry, and then I'm still studying. I'm pursuing my PhD in social intelligence.
There must be something.
Rajiv, be careful. She's in POS committee and all. Okay, so we don't want to hear anything. Please be aware she's in POS committee. So be careful when you do chit chat after that Zoom.
Yeah, so my closest association with Chennai is that we work closely with EVIT, Empowering Women in IT.
Okay.
Yeah, Chennai chapter.
So our normal practice, Aparna, is to hand over a memento as a token of our gratitude. But unfortunately, remotely we can't do that.
Yeah, so we can give you a confetti
opportunity. We will do that.
Yeah. I sent a confetti here, so.
Yeah, absolutely my honor. So someday when I visit Chennai, I hope to meet you all in person.
So,
absolutely.
So your number is a 1-800 number, or how does that work?
No. It's a telephone number. Yeah.
Okay.
Mobile.
And
number.
and is there a call center? How many people man it? Or
so we have 4 people managing the calls.
That's.
Sorry.
24/7, Sujata. 24/7.
Okay.
4 people at all times.
2 people. Yeah. 9.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. But is that enough? I mean, so 4 people
because
are
right now Socio's number is just getting widely circulated, because in Kerala our main target centers are Kerala, Karnataka, and some parts of Tamil Nadu. Now Kerala has a 24/7 toll-free number. I also work closely with the police department in Karnataka and Kerala. Now Kerala has a program called Chiri, which is initiated by the Kerala police, which is a complete solution for child abuse and children emotional mental well-being. So we support their staff through training programs. So in a way, I think in terms of reach, that is huge and wide than Socio, because Socio, end of the day, is a private firm. It's not a government-driven initiative. So we manage, yeah. Very soon we would want to go with a toll-free number like 1800, provided the government also supports us. Yeah, but Kerala government has come forward to kind of join hands with us.
Rajiv, back to you, Rajiv.
Yeah, that's it. You have formally closed it, so this comes to a formal close. Thank you again, Aparna. We'll catch up offline. We'll talk about Cherplaseri more in detail.
Definitely. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, watch out.